Hello, my name is David Wang, and before we get into the content of our presentation, I would first like to introduce how and why we chose our topic, questions, and resources. Me, Ellie, and Jack first researched several modern topics and challenges within the field of cryptography or relating to it, such as hashing techniques or quantum cryptography, but we ended up choosing digital forensics, a field we were all interested in. And although it doesn't directly use cryptography, in fact, it oftentimes tries to defeat or circumvent encryption, it's a field that requires thorough knowledge of cryptographic techniques. And after we chose this topic, we each came up with several questions we had about the field. And since none of us were very well versed, we chose to go a more general route and ask questions about the characteristics, challenges, and several specific examples about the field. And the resources we found were tailored toward answering these questions, with the more technical questions being answered using academic papers or textbooks. And for more specific examples, we also used websites. Now, what is digital forensics exactly? And according to the fundamentals of digital cryptography, digital forensics, it's the examination of digital storage and how to investigate, analyze, and recover and report digital materials, often relating to digital crime. And most of the time, it involves a crime where digital data could be relevant. And since the digital world is becoming more and more relevant, of course, it would also become more relevant when relating to crime. Now, since the digital forensics deals with electronics or digital components to crimes, the number of fields potentially covered is very large, including things such as computer science, cryptography, of course, and even criminal law. The fundamentals of digital forensics say that some of the more technical concepts that are frequently used include data storage systems such as memory drives, hard drives, and how to navigate to find hidden or deleted files, and also encryption algorithms such as hashing algorithms and how to bypass them, oftentimes using side channel attacks, finding extra information through things such as looking at what parts of memory are accessed when an algorithm is run, or timing the computations that an algorithm makes. So, what is the digital forensic process and how is evidence gathered? The first component of digital forensics is, of course, the crime. The field is centered around, most often called cybercrime, which is crime committed using a computer against another person or computer. The next stage is incident response, where technical staff develops protocols and procedures to respond to a threat. And since people's digital well-beings are at risk, this stage often needs to be very quick. Digital forensic experts gather data from related log files or analyzing compromised computers and systems, and they minimize the damage by containing compromised systems or protecting the unaffected ones. And afterwards, they eradicate the threat by redownloading software, replacing hardware, or rebooting to backups. Now, the collection of evidence is crucial to the digital forensics process because it is the collection of data to prevent future attacks of a similar kind. And the characteristics and how the attack was performed and any encryption techniques used within are recorded. Now, what are some challenges that digital forensics faces as a field? There are several challenges, and according to Nixon M. Maries and Dr. Heines Venter in their paper Taxonomy of Challenges for Digital Forensics, they detail four main challenges to the field, the first of which were technical difficulties. For example, it's very difficult to break cryptographic algorithms, current cryptographic algorithms, which often takes months or even years to solve. And also the volatility of data used in these investigations, which can easily be damaged or altered or deteriorate when handling. There are also legal challenges and also ethical questions about digital forensics. And since it deals with the law, investigators often have a certain strict jurisdiction that prevent them from gathering certain data. And also when gathering the data, they might break some invasion of privacy laws oftentimes. The last two challenges are personnel challenges and operational challenges. Another paper, Challenges in Digital Forensics by Eva A. Vince, also details these problems, which explains the shortage of qualified experts since digital forensics requires such a vast amount of fields for one to be an expert in, and also the lack of uniformity in operations between multiple digital forensic experts, preventing there from being a working base of knowledge for everyone to work off of.
What is an example of a criminal investigation where the use of digital forensics was essential to its resolution? This source comes from Forensics College's Forensics Case File, Catching the BTK Strangler. A great example of how digital forensics can be used to solve criminal cases can be found in a very widely known and infamous case, that being the BTK killer. A serial murderer that took 10 lives between the years 1974 to 1991 and taunted investigators and the media by sending various packages and communications throughout the 2004 and 2005. DNA evidence as well as surveillance footage documenting contact with BTK gave clues to the investigators, including the car he drove, but little information could be derived from the communications. BTK then sent a 1.44 megabyte floppy disk to investigators that contained more taunting messages in a Microsoft Word document, not knowing about the ability for digital forensics to recover potentially sensitive information by navigating the disk storage, its metadata, data that provides information in regards to other pieces of possibly containing the file, divulged the name of the user, Dennis, and keywords Christ Lutheran Church, and allowed investigators to track down the church and find that the council president's name was Dennis, confirming the killer and resulting in his arrest. As more devices start including data storages and capability and even computing capabilities, the reach of digital forensics grows wider. This even extends to cars now, and functionalities such as GPS systems and Apple CarPlay demanding data storage, computing, and internet access capabilities. This source comes from Control Risk, titled 5 Case Studies with Digital Evidence in Corporate Investigations. This example demonstrates a concrete use of digital forensics on a vehicle. According to an article in Digital Forensics magazine in 2017, a driver of a dark SUV caused a hit-and-run car crash by driving without lights on. The SUV collided with a car, crashed into a group of trees, and fled the scene. Authorities managed to locate an SUV that matched the description of the suspect vehicle. By analyzing data from the SUV's onboard diagnostics, infotainment, and telematics systems, they were able to determine that the SUV had passed the scene of the car crash at around the same time it occurred, that the headlights were not turned on, and that the SUV was moved back and forth several times immediately after the accident near the damaged trees. The police also discovered additional evidence about the SUV's routes and destinations recorded in the navigation scene. Now let's talk about what steganography is. This source comes from Sherlock Institute of Forensic Science, How Steganography Can Lead to Digital Forensics Investigation, in January 4th, 2022, by Ankit Tripathi. So steganography is a technique where a message is hidden in any video or MP3 file or audio. This technique usually implements cryptography in the form of a hash algorithm. This adds an extra layer in protecting the hidden message. The idea behind steganography is that the message cannot be detected by the casual eye. However, through decoding the message can be found out. Criminals use steganography to communicate with each other in a way which third parties cannot access what is being said. It is becoming more and more difficult to find and interpret these hidden messages because the encryption tactics are getting better and better. So how does steganography relate to forensic investigation? Steganography is the simplest way to encode a message. So in a forensic investigation, it is important to be able to detect the use of steganography. To do this, you must first collect all the data from a system because it can be considered useful evidence. Checking the data and applications of said system, it can be determined if any tool related to steganography is being used. Some tools used to detect steganography are StegDetect, ExeCrypt, StegoWatch, and more. Another important function of steganography detection software is that it finds possible files containing these secret messages. The software can also give some evidence as to what type of algorithm was used to encode the message in the file, making it possible to recover the hidden message. This is more familiar to the cryptography system studied in class. The encryptor, or in class usually referred to as Alice, encrypts the secret message somewhere in the file. That file is then sent out to the public channel. The file can be decrypted by someone who knows how to do this, Bob. However, no one else will be able to interpret the secret message from the video. This is where steganography detections come into play, like the ones listed above, which can identify if steganography is being used. Now let's talk about how encryption methods impacted digital forensics. This source comes from The History of Encryption, The Roots of Modern Day Cybersecurity from Tesseract, written by the Tesseract team in January 14th, 2022. Encryption is the process of scrambling information to prevent unauthorized access. It is a necessity for protecting classified material and also a roadblock in a lot of digital forensics investigations. Individuals use it to protect financial details and medical records. Large businesses use it to protect trade secrets and intellectual properties. Governments use it to protect politically, economically, and diplomatically sensitive information. However, criminals also use it to communicate in secrecy and conceal unlawful acts. Decrypting data is usually the first step in criminal investigations and essential for investigators to do. The field of digital forensics became, in large part, when data encryption and modern technology became widely accessible to the public. Encryption and cryptography have not just impacted digital forensics, rather, evolution has created it necessary for digital forensics. Throughout all of history, people have needed to conceal information. The first recorded instance of encryption was around 500 BC. The Spartans used an invention called the skytail, a cylindered object that performed a transposition cipher to conceal messages for military purposes. Then times changed. People became more familiar with the common methods of encryption. The more complicated methods were required. In World War II, an electromechanical encryption and decryption came to be. The famous Enigma machine was used by the Nazis to send code, and it was impossible to crack. Almost impossible to crack. Breaking Enigma was necessary to win the war and led to an evolution in cryptography and an eventual invention of the computer. In the 1970s, cryptographic devices were regarded as a matter of national security. Whitfield Diffie and Martin Hellman published a paper in 1976 called New Directions in Cryptography that introduced the idea of public and private key encryption. Then, just as significantly, Phil Zimmermann authorized Pretty Good Privacy, or PGP. And this information about the Diffie, Hellman, and Martin comes from Stanford News Service, March 1st, 2016, by Steve Fife and Tom Abate. And then the information from the Phil Zimmermann PGP comes from Wikipedia Pretty Good Privacy. So the PGP is a public domain file encryption designed to be used by individuals, meaning anyone in the world can send encrypted communications. Zimmerman had to fight U.S. government customs lawsuits for illegally distributing munitions. This brings the story to today. To this point, the encryption of data was most widely used by governments. However, with the evolution of technology, the use of encrypted communications became a necessity to the regular citizen. The U.S. government fought Zimmerman because of a debate still ongoing today. Should the government have access to our private communications? PGP is a system where an individual can communicate and nobody else reads the information unless they have the right password. However, while legitimate businesses and lawful citizens have access to this information, so do drug dealers, terrorists, and other criminals. For example, in 2007, U.S. Customs officer arrested someone for child pornography, but when they seized his laptops, the files were protected by a PGP encryption program. Encryption has become a necessity in this day and age to both the individual and large organizations. It is essential to the protection of our national security, essential to protect individual financial records, and many other important things. However, that accessibility has drawbacks. People around the world have access to learn and grow cryptography and encryption science. Law enforcement has to keep up in order to protect their own data and decrypt adversarial data. Without a doubt, as encryption methods mature and advance, so must digital forensics. And these are some of our resources. And there's the rest of them. Thank you guys.